the hand that comes after suffering. According to the stories told by those who have lived long in the world, some people are blessed in their early years, while others suffer greatly in their early years, but see everything go well in their middle or later years. In the case of Joseph, from the Bible, he was a person who suffered greatly in his early years. He was sold into servitude in Egypt because of his brother's jealousy, and even there, he was wrongfully imprisoned after rejecting the advances of his master's wife. None of these events were Joseph's fault. They were all caused by the greed and jealousy of others. Nevertheless, Joseph had to endure all this suffering. In this respect, Joseph is comparable to Christ in terms of suffering. Of course, Joseph's suffering cannot be compared to the suffering of Jesus, but it is comparable in that he suffered without any fault of his own. In fact, as we live our lives, there are often times when we, like Joseph, suffer unjustly. In such situations, we may appeal our grievances and express grumbling and discouragement, but this is precisely the time when we should rely on God and endure with patience. This is because such suffering and pain can sometimes be like an invitation from God to lead us to blessings. If Joseph had not been sold, he would not have become the governor of Egypt. If he had not been wrongfully imprisoned, he would not have met the chief cupbearer. Furthermore, if the chief cupbearer had remembered Joseph and released him immediately after Joseph interpreted his dream, he would not have become the governor of Egypt 2 years later. This is because, in Egypt, one could not take public office before the age of 30, and Joseph was 28 when he interpreted the cupbearer's dream, and he was restored to his position. Therefore, the time of waiting and suffering in prison was necessary for Joseph to become the governor of Egypt. Thus, we must realize that behind the hardships and difficulties that come our way, there is God's providence and protection guiding us. Instead of wasting time and years with complaints and resentment, we should see these hardships and difficulties as opportunities given by God, endure with patience, and wait for God's providence and work. The suffering of Joseph is recorded to provide us with such teachings and insights. Through Joseph's suffering, we learn that even when similar or greater sufferings and pains come our way, we must have the eyes of faith to see God beyond the problems. Most people fail to recognize this divine principle and fill their hearts with complaints and resentment instead of waiting for the blessings. As an old saying in our country goes, good fortune comes to those who smile, even in difficult times. Responding with joy, patience, and laughter can transform hardships into blessings. If we believe in God, we must understand that God, being good, will surely bless us with good things. Parents sometimes allow their children to face hardships and difficulties to help them grow stronger. However, the purpose of such parents is not to cause their children to stumble or despair, but to help them grow into stronger and deeper individuals through the pain and suffering. Through the growth that came from his suffering, Joseph not only saved himself, but also his family in his homeland and all the people in the region of Egypt from famine. This was the secret of how Joseph grew through suffering and became a person of great blessing. Therefore, even if such hardships come into our lives, recognize that they are training and refining us to achieve spiritual growth. May you endure these difficulties with patience, knowing they are the foundation for your faith to grow.
구독, 좋아요, 알림 설정 해주세요. Subscribe, like, set notifications.